What is going on, everybody? This is another episode of Coordinated Chaos. In this episode, we will be recapping what happened in Week 18 of the NFL season. Then we're also going to, as I go through some of these games, I'm going to get through some of the head coach firings, some of the general manager firings, and hirings that have already kind of happened, things of that nature. Then we're also going to go through the entire Super Wildcard weekend kind of gambling prediction. I'll go through and tell you exactly which direction I would lean towards for the time being. I'm going to reserve the right to change that as the weekend comes about, but I will put out all my usual gambling videos for my social medias like TikTok and YouTube Shorts by the end of the weekend. So you'll have that there, but let's go ahead and start jumping straight into what happened in Week 18. It was a wild and pretty entertaining Week 18 for the, there's the, what's actually going to happen because of the fact that a lot of these players or a lot of the star players aren't playing in it because there's a lot of teams that have locked up their positioning in the playoffs, but there was a lot of teams that still had things to play for and playoff implications on the line. So it was way more entertaining than I anticipated, to be completely honest with you. And let's start with what happened on Saturday, the first game of the weekend. Steelers versus Ravens. This one, obviously, the Ravens had the number one seed locked up. They did not play most of their starters. They sprinkled in some starters here and there. But for the most part, the Steelers were obviously playing for their playoff lives in this one. They needed a few things to happen for them to get into the playoffs, as well as doing the one thing that's going to help them the most, which is actually win the game against the Ravens. And they actually got the job done. Mason Rudolph, it was a disgusting game out there, but he made one play essentially that turned the tide in that game for the Steelers and got them the W. It was a pass directly down the middle, kind of like a post route down the middle to Deontay Johnson. He outran everybody on the defense. It was a disgusting, sloppy game, raining, cold. You could tell that everybody in the stands was pretty miserable for the most part until the Steelers made a play to obviously kind of put themselves in a position to win the game. But yeah, for the most part, it was back and forth. They were tied up for the most of the game. And then the Steelers kind of broke that long pass, and that was pretty much all she wrote there. The Ravens couldn't really move the ball on offenses very well either. Both teams were struggling. Like I said, the weather was a huge factor in this game. People could not catch the football because of how wet their hands were, and their gloves just weren't helping in this situation. It was just a torrential downpour there in Maryland. So crazy game. Steelers get the win, and spoiler alert, everything happens in their favor for the most part, and they slide into that last number 7 seed in the AFC playoff picture. So good for them. Mike Tomlin, once again, punching above his weight level because he's just dragging a team's kicking and screaming to the playoffs for like the umpteenth time in his tenure as the Steelers head coach. So he's one of the best in the business, and he continues to show the reasons why. Let's move on to the Texans versus Colts. This was the night game on Saturday. This was a wildly entertaining game. Right off the rip, you get a field goal drive straight down the field for the Colts. They stalled a little bit in the red zone there. But then, next possession, you have the Texans go down, and C.J. Stroud gets a little bit of play action under center play and just slings it all the way down the field. I think it was like a 75-yard touchdown by Nico Collins there. C.J. Stroud puts it exactly where he needs to. Just a great throw, great catch, everything. Just Nico Collins is going to be a name to look forward to in fantasy football drafts heading into next season. He's developing into a stud, and he's got a stud of a quarterback to throw it to him now. So that duo is going to be very important going into the future for that franchise. But yeah, Texans get the job done in this one. It came down to the wire. The Colts had a chance there to get in there and score at the very end of this game. But what happened was, I think it was like a 4th and 3, 4th and 2, somewhere around there. They had a play call. It was the right play call. The play was going to work. They threw a little swing pass out to Goodson there, a running back for the Colts. And the pass was just a little bit off by Gardner Minshew, and Goodson also kind of dropped it. It hit him in the hands, so it's one of those situations where, like, what is it, the chicken or the egg? Like, was the throw bad enough to throw him off, and he probably should have caught it because it hit him in the hands. But either way, it just, the play call worked. Shane Steichen put them in position to win. It was just the players did not necessarily execute in this situation, and it cost them the game in this one. And I was really excited, to be completely honest with you. I wanted to see C.J. Stroud and that Texans team. I was really proud of the work that D'Amico Ryans has done all season here for this Houston Texans to get them in position to make the playoffs. and they obviously need a little bit of something to work out for them on Sunday to see if they could win the division based on the win against the Colts. And spoiler alert, that also happened. We'll get to that game in a minute. But Texans get a huge win there. Shane Steichen, you can't really fault him for the season that they've had. He's had a great season. He's put them in position to get in the playoffs with Gardner Minshew as his quarterback, considering Anthony Richardson got hurt early on in the season. And it just comes down to sometimes like you can have the X's and O's, but it comes down to the Jimmies and the Joes in a lot of situations when the playoffs and things of that nature are on the line. So the Colts failed in that aspect, but obviously stock up for the Colts moving forward, and hopefully they can just keep Anthony Richardson healthy all of next season just to see what they actually have in that offense when he is fully healthy and at quarterback all season long. Let's move on to the Buccaneers versus the Panthers game. Buccaneers did not look good in this game, to be completely honest with you. Baker Mayfield looked a little skittish, a little giddy in the pocket. I think he was dealing with a rib injury. He was questionable coming into this game that he was even going to play. Obviously, there was probably no doubt that he was actually going to play. They just had to list him as, on the injury report as questionable. But obviously, this was the game to get them into the playoffs to win the NFC South and cement themselves into the playoff picture. So he was going to play no matter what. He played in the game. They got the job done. Just 3 field goals with Caleb McLaughlin got the job done. The Panthers did not score for the second week in a row. So the Panthers obviously stocked down in that fashion, but we kind of already knew that the Panthers are in a bad situation. They also fired Scott Federer, their GM, after this game, or this Monday morning, I should say. So he's out of the picture. David Tepper essentially cleaning house for a whole new regime to come in. I'll be interested to see how many of the coaches on the coaching staff they decide to retain, even with a new head coach. And we'll see, because a lot of head coaches want to bring in their own guys. A lot of GMs want to bring in their own head coach. A lot of decisions to be made in the offseason for the Panthers. But that's enough about them. Obviously, we'll worry about that in the offseason. But Buccaneers obviously win the division, winning this game here. So they will host a playoff game. They will host the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football in Super Wildcard weekend. I'm not looking forward to that. I'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, Buccaneers get the job done there. And let's move on to the Lions versus the Vikings. The Lions get the job done here. Jahmyr Gibbs has another great game. Jared Goff and that offense do just enough to get by the Vikings. Essentially, the Nick Mullins, just magic ride, essentially had to stop at some point. He's, a serviceable backup, obviously, but he's not a guy that's going to carry you to a bunch of wins when he plays as risky, like high risk, high reward of a football style as he does. So, Lions get the job done. They moved to 12-5, which is just incredible for them. The Detroit Lions saying they're 12-5 in a season is just something that you wouldn't think you would hear, considering how the team was, even just 3 years ago now. Dan Campbell has done an incredible job getting them into the playoffs there. They are the 3 seed in the NFC playoffs, so shout out to them. They get the big W. Let's move on, though. Nothing really to say there else. Let's go Falcons versus Saints. In this one, obviously, the Saints, or the Falcons actually come out and play pretty well at the beginning of this game. They actually get their playmakers involved. Imagine that Arthur Smith actually starts using his players as soon as the fantasy playoffs are completely over. A Bijan manager, like a Bijan Robinson manager, I should say, like myself, was not very excited about seeing his 76-yard touchdown catch and run. Obviously, the week after, I get bounced from the NFC or the fantasy playoff championship, but it is what it is. But Arthur Smith, too little, too late to start using all of his weapons and have a competitive football team. It didn't matter still, because the Saints still just roared back and won this game by a ton. Controversial end to this one. They were supposed to be in victory formation and kneel. They were on the 1 or 2 yard line, and Jameis Winston calls an audible at the line and gets Jamal Williams a touchdown at the end of this game, in which after the game ends, Arthur Smith comes up to Dennis Allen and is calling him all kinds of names. He's cussing him out. He's going after him, saying that was some BS because he scored. He's just running the score up instead of whatever. But at the end of the day, Dennis Allen, he basically said that he's like I understand that was not my call, and we found out later that James Winston made an audible at the line, and it was basically his fault. But that's kind of an indictment on both coaches, really. Both coaches just I don't think Dennis Allen's very good at his job. Arthur Smith clearly not very good at his job. He actually gets fired after this game on Monday morning. So his job is over there in Atlanta, which is a site for a lot of people that wanted this thing to happen. I mean, you never really want somebody to just completely lose their job, but whenever there's coaching malpractice, whenever they're not utilizing the playmakers they have on their team, something's got to give at some point. And so the general manager and owner of the Atlanta Falcons saw exactly what everybody else was seeing this season, and it all came to a head. And Arthur Smith obviously gets fired in this one, but it's also an indictment on Dennis Allen that he, obviously calls a play to get them in victory formation, and the players just go rogue essentially and call a play of their own just to spite the opposing coach, and he get a guy a touchdown who hadn't got a lot this season or whatever, and Jamal Williams. Weird situation. Like I said, I think Dennis Allen's probably on the hot seat as well. We'll see what happens there, but he has not been fired just yet. And they asked him about his positioning as the head coach, and he said, "I expect to be back next year. We'll see if that lasts." But yeah, Arthur Smith officially out as Atlanta Falcons head coach. Should be a very opportunistic spot for a up and coming offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, whoever they decide to hire as the new head coach. Somebody's going to like that job. Job is attractive, I should say, because the amount of weapons they actually do have on offense. The offensive line is good. The defense has been playing great all season. I think the defensive coordinator, honestly, should probably be retained, as he has done a great job there for the Falcons this year. So we'll see what happens with the Falcons. We'll cover that in the offseason as things progress there. Let's move on to the Jaguars versus the Titans. This was an epic collapse. It's like the Jaguars are the AFC version of the Philadelphia Eagles, which is just, there's a lot of irony in that in itself. But yeah, so just a huge collapse. At one point this season, the Jaguars were the 1 seed in the AFC, and they lost 5 or 6 out of 7 down the stretch and completely missed the playoffs as the Titans, a division rival, beats them in the last game of the season to knock them out of the playoffs completely, which moves the Texans in there as the 4th seed in the AFC playoff picture as the division winner there. So very big and disappointing season for Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, that team in general. Once again, I would beat this dead horse until it is a complete pulp at this point in time. But dude, Press Taylor has got to go as the offensive coordinator. He has single-handedly destroyed multiple prime seasons of multiple quarterbacks in this league at this point. Doug Peterson just needs to take back play calling as he used to when he was with the Eagles. I just think it's time to part ways with that portion of his offensive coaching staff, and it just is what it is, man. I don't think he's a very good coach, and I think Doug Peterson needs to go ahead and just take the reins back from his own team. But yet, Jaguars, epic collapse. Titans, Mike Vrabel never going to lay down for anybody. Probably relishes in the situation of being able to play spoiler to somebody, especially a division rival like the Jaguars, and he took advantage of it, won the game. Derrick Henry gets a nice little send-off in Tennessee there. He's, pictured or videoed after the game outside of the stadium, still signing autographs for people because it's probably going to be his last year in Tennessee. Just what an incredible run by him. Obviously, they didn't get to win any championships while he was there, but just one of the all-time great running backs in NFL history. We'll see where he goes. A lot of people speculating that he might end up with the Ravens next season. That would be insane to add that type of guy to the offense. But I mean, arguably, Gus Edwards is essentially the same type of running back, so I don't know how much that really makes sense, but a lot of people want him to go there. But it is what it is. Jaguars lose, obviously huge, out of the playoffs. A lot of decisions to be made in the all seasons for them as well. A lot of speculation on, did we anoint Trevor Lawrence a little bit too soon? Is it one of those situations where if he just gets a competent offensive coordinator and system, he'll look 10 times better? It's very, very possible that's the case. That's the case with a lot of quarterbacks in this league, and I'll get to one a little bit later. And it happens to deal with my favorite team in the NFL. So just like I said, crazy circumstances for the Jaguars, but let's move on here. Packers versus Bears. The Packers get the job done. They continue to own the Chicago Bears in this rivalry. I personally thought the Bears would be a little bit more competitive in this game. I bet Bears +3 this weekend. Was hoping. I mean, based on the way the Bears have been playing the last few weeks, I really thought with the way that Joe Barry had been implementing his defense that, DJ Moore and Justin Fields will be able to take advantage of how bad that defense has been playing. But Jordan Love just got the job done at the end of the day. He's been playing incredible football as of late, and it's just the right time to get hot right now going into the playoffs. Going to be playing a tough Dallas Cowboys team in the playoffs, so that's going to be a very, very fun matchup in the first round. A lot of history between those two teams in the playoffs, and it's going to be a fun storyline going forward to see if this new era of the franchise quarterback for the Green Bay Packers can once again basically destroy the hopes and dreams of Dallas Cowboys fans and their organization in general. Let's move on. Eagles versus Giants, man. This one was disgusting. Man, what a disaster. Obviously, I've laid out in multiple weeks on end now what some of the problems with the Philadelphia Eagles have been. But this one kind of takes the cake, really. Like, obviously, you go into a game against the Giants. Wink Martindale is completely known for his blitzing acumen. He blitzes on the highest percentage of plays in all of football. And the Eagles, for the last 2 or 3 years now, have struggled against the blitz. And it's not just Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has not been great against the blitz in general in his career before, but he had gotten better last year. But then this year, once again, they had zero answers for an all-out blitz or blitzing in general. They had no hot reads built into the offense again for however many games in a row this is, like 3 years straight of games. They still have no answers for the blitz, and they're going into a game against Wink Martindale, who that's what he does. That is his literal thing, is just blitzing, and they have no answers. They blitz pretty much every play against the Eagles in this one. And obviously the Eagles offense can't get anything done because they don't have any answers for it, which is just coaching malpractice in general, considering the fact that you have so much talent on this team. All you have to do is build in hot reads for them to, have an answer. Jalen Hurts to get the ball out of his hands to a playmaker. And it's as simple as that, and it still hasn't happened. The Eagles coaching staff is an abomination at this point. The fact that they're losing to the 30th ranked offense in all of football, and the defense is just getting carved up. It's like the defense is bad, obviously. The play calling and play designing, the scheme, everything on offense for the Philadelphia Eagles is also bad. So once again, I will say, and I don't really take any real pleasure in saying this, but I think the whole Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff needs to go. We will see if it, like the playoff game against Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, because if the Eagles go in to Tampa Bay and get embarrassed on an island primetime game, Monday Night Football in the Super Wildcard weekend, then Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman are going to have to make a lot of very difficult decisions going into the offseason if the Eagles look like complete trash like they have the last, 4 or 5 weeks in a row now. Just an epic collapse from going from 10-1 to now 11-6 going down the stretch, losing 4 of the last 5 or 5 of the last 6, whatever it ends up being now. I think 5 of the last 6. Just what a disaster of a situation. I mean, you lose to the Seahawks, one of the worst defenses in all of football. You lose to the Giants, one of the worst teams in all of football, and you lose to the Cardinals, one of also the worst defenses and offenses in football as well. Obviously a lot of people were saying the gauntlet earlier on with, the Dolphins game, the Chiefs game, the Cowboys game, all that stuff, the Bills game, and the Eagles won all those games, and they got down to this, and it looks like every defense and every facet of, opposing teams have honed in and figured out exactly what the Philadelphia Eagles want to do on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, and they have completely exploited it. Just a disaster of epic proportions, and the Eagles are poised to have a very rough offseason this season when it comes to a lot of decision-making in the organization. All right, so we're going to go on to the Cowboys versus Commanders here. Cowboys get the job done. It was a little bit close in the first half. The Commanders actually, get to score a little bit here. They get a blocked field goal attempt by the Cowboys. They take it back and then score off of it. So it was a little bit iffy in like the first quarter, first half of this game, but then the Cowboys got into a rhythm and they just completely curb stomped the rest of the game. These destroy the Commanders for the most part. Sam Howell just not the guy. Everybody thought in the organization that Sam Howell was going to be the guy like 7 weeks ago, and since then he's been one of the worst quarterbacks in all of football. So obviously Commanders have a lot to think about there. They also fired Ron Rivera as the head coach, so he is out. They also made some moves in the general manager type situation. What they did was they hired Bob Myers, the former general manager of the Golden State Warriors, who won all those titles with the Warriors when, obviously the Steph Curry years and whatnot. So I think he's a 4-time NBA champion as an executive of the year type of guy. They hired him. So Josh Harris, the owner of the Commanders, has a lot of connections, obviously, to the NBA. And so he hires Bob Myers and Rick Spielman, a former longtime general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, both of them to head up a team to essentially hire a new general manager and head coach of the Washington Commanders. So essentially he's built this committee between these two good executive type minds to see if they can hire the best available general manager as well as head coach moving forward for the Commanders, which I think is probably a good idea, to be completely honest with you. I think there's not a lot you can poke the holes in of that theory and that logic to try to find out who is the best option for the Commanders moving forward at head coach and general manager. So that's interesting. But yeah, Ron Rivera out, as he should. Been a completely disaster since he's been there, to be honest with you. So I completely don't fault them for doing this whatsoever. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for Commanders versus Cowboys there. Let's move on to the last game of the weekend, Dolphins versus the Bills. And this one was an interesting one, man. You had a little bit of everything in this game when it comes to narratives, like big time, polar opposite narrative type deals. You have the Tua haters are feeling pretty good this morning, considering he had a pretty rough game in this one. He turned the ball over quite a bit in this one as well. Looks like the Bills are kind of all over the timing and anticipation throws that Tua is so famous for. He had an underthrow to Tyreek Hill, which is another narrative a lot of people want to go after about Tua not having the requisite arm strength and things of that nature. All that was presentable in this one, as well as the Josh Allen turns the ball over way too much. He's turnover prone. That had life in this game as well, because he turned the ball over a ton in this game as well. So back and forth, the Bills and Dolphins kept turning the ball over to each other. Both defenses are playing pretty decent in this one, but both quarterbacks were giving them opportunities to be opportunistic. So it's just crazy how that works out. But in the end, the Bills end up winning the game. Essentially, it was 14-7 for a lot of this game in the favor of the Dolphins. The Dolphins punt off to the Bills. Deontay Hardy takes it back to the house for a touchdown, and then later on, just one possession right after that, the Dolphins punt back to the Bills. The Bills go right down the field and score a touchdown with Dawson Knox, and that's pretty much all she wrote for the game. Bills slip into the playoffs. And they are, obviously right in the mix there. They couldn't really do a whole lot of moving around, though. But the Dolphins also make the playoffs. So both of them make the playoffs. There's a chance that they play each other at a certain point in this playoff picture. So that'll be interesting if they have to play each other in the playoffs as well. But both of them make it. Bills get the win here, and that's pretty much it. Let's move on to the Super Wildcard weekend gambling preview, prediction, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to go through these, and this is, like I said, this is just right off the cuff. This is just gut feeling. I'm gonna do it by whatever the set lines are right now. I'm not gonna move them to money line or anything like that. If I decide to move it to money line or obviously the lines will move as the week goes on. I will make some changes, and if you see those changes, they will be on my social media whenever I decide to do the full gambit of playoff games and what I predict to happen in these, and obviously what I'm going to end up betting. So we're going to start with the Browns, and I'm going to go Browns minus 2.5 versus the Texans. Texans, obviously, awesome showing against the Colts, but almost had a chance there to lose that game, and to be completely honest with you, with Joe Flacco in there at quarterback and the way that Browns defense has been playing as of late, I just don't think this Texans team has enough on the offensive side of the ball to get it done against the Browns. So I will take the Browns and the points there at 2.5. Let's move on to the Chiefs and Dolphins game. Chiefs minus 3.5 versus the Dolphins is what I feel right off the bat gut. They played earlier on in the season. The Dolphins seem to have trouble moving the ball on that Chiefs defense, which is a very good unit, obviously, kind of keeping the whole Chiefs team afloat right now as the offense is kind of struggling to score the ball. But I think as this, playoffs start, Pat Mahomes will lock in a little bit more. Travis Kelce will lock in a little bit more, and the coaching staff will too. They're going to have time to prepare for this because they didn't really have to put together a real game plan against the Chargers this past week. So they probably were going ahead and looking ahead for the matchup that they were potentially going to get with one of the two teams that they potentially could play against in the first round of the playoffs, and that was going to end up being obviously the Dolphins. So I think the Chiefs can win this game, and I think they can cover the 3.5-point spread. To be completely honest, though, if I had to bet it, I think I would just go Chiefs money line. The 3.5 seems a little bit too much. The hook there is what's kind of taking me off of it. But right now, if I had to do it with the line, 3.5 Chiefs, I'm going with them. Bills minus 9.5 versus the Steelers. I'm going with the Bills. Steelers, I know they've looked pretty good as of late with Mason Rudolph in there, but this last game against backups in the Ravens defense just kind of put me over the edge. There's no way I'm going to pick them against any team going into the playoffs right now. Even if Kenny Pickett gets back in this game, I don't think I'm going to have confidence in that. He's going to be rusty coming off the ankle injuries, and that whole ordeal is one of the many variables of why I would never pick the Steelers to win one of these playoff games. But they're just not a good enough team right now. Mike Tomlin has essentially got them to the point where they're in the playoffs, and that's exactly where it's going to end. Just because the talent is just not there for the Steelers. So I will go with the Bills minus 9.5, even though the Bills have looked a little bit rough the last 3 weeks in general as well. Just Josh Allen can will them to a win of at least over 9.5, I think. Once again, another. I think this line will probably move a little bit, but I don't know which direction. But I will go right now Bills minus 9.5 versus the Steelers. Next game, Packers plus 7.5 versus the Cowboys. I think this game is going to be interesting because obviously you have Jordan Love on a heater. The offense has been playing well. Defense for the Packers still have a lot of questions. Don't think they're very good. So I think the Cowboys can score in this game. So maybe I'll think about the over-under when I'm talking about best bets going forward, what I'm going to put out there on social media. We'll see what the line ends up being for that Cowboys and Packers game. I think there's going to be a lot of points to be scored there. But what I will say is, this could be a very interesting game for the Cowboys. So a lot of Cowboys fans were definitely rooting for trying to get that 2 seed in the NFC playoff picture for the actual reason of getting home playoff games. Obviously, everybody knows the track record of the Cowboys in Jerry World. They play so much better there than on the road. But the one thing I will say about this situation is they're at home. They're playing a lesser seed. They're playing a lesser team in the Packers. And I think that just puts a ton of pressure on the Dallas Cowboys to get a win. Obviously, it's your first home playoff game in a little while in the Wildcard round there. So I think that puts a ton of pressure on Dak Prescott and the offense to make things happen. The defense has been a little bit leaky as of late when it comes to better competition teams in the NFL, like the Dolphins and those types of teams that they ended up losing to at the end of the day. The defense kind of let up at the end and let them win the game, even when Dak Prescott put them in position to win for the most part. This is going to be a high-pressure situation for the Cowboys. They're going to want to win for their home crowd, and Jordan Love's on a heater. They are hot right now going into the playoffs, so this could be a recipe for disaster for the Cowboys. So I think I'm going to take a Packers team that can be very competitive in this game. I don't know if I would ever pick them to win this game against the Cowboys, but what I will say is they will stay competitive, and I think they will cover the 7.5. Let's go on to the Rams versus the Lions. I'm going to go Rams plus 3.5 versus the Lions, and this is just one of those situations where this is a great storyline. Matt Stafford going back to Detroit, where he started his career off, obviously, and I think the Rams can definitely stay competitive in this game. The Rams are a completely different team than what they were at the beginning of the season when a lot of these teams were beating up on the Rams, including like my Philadelphia Eagles. I think the addition, just the more utilization and usage of Kyron Williams has transformed this offense into something that is very special. Puka Nacua obviously breaks the rookie receiving record. Just having an incredible season. Cooper Kupp is not what he once was because of the injuries he sustained this season, but he's still a very competent wide receiver at this point in time. I think the offense can give the Detroit Lions everything they would want, because the Detroit Lions passing defense is terrible. It's going to be a shootout, I believe. I think the Lions are going to get everything they want when it comes to trying to stop this Matt Stafford-led offense, and Jared Goff is going to have a lot of pressure on him in the first Lions playoff game in a long time at home against the guy that he got traded for, going from LA to the Lions. A lot of pressure on Jared Goff to outplay Matt Stafford. What an incredible storyline. The playoffs worked out to a perfect position here for this all to transpire, and I'm very excited for that game. I can't wait to watch that one, and I'm completely rooting for Matt Stafford and the Rams to win that game. I want to play a little bit of spoiler. We're just going to humble the Lions for a little bit, and just the Lions fans. They got a little bit too excited too soon. So we're going to go on to the last game, Monday Night Football, Island Primetime. This is going to be ugly as heck. Buccaneers +3 versus the Eagles. Best bet of the week. Lock it in. The Buccaneers are going to win this game by probably multiple scores. Based on the fact of what I just watched the Giants do to the Eagles, there's no way the Eagles win this game. I mean, honestly, I've already bet this game. Buccaneers -2.5, so it's already moved to 3. I think the Buccaneers definitely win this game. I don't see a situation based on what I've seen as of late from the Eagles that they can win against any competent competition, let alone they've lost to the Cardinals and the Seahawks and the Giants as of late. I mean, all those teams are so much worse than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have not even looked great as of late, but they have everything they need to definitely put a beat down on this Philadelphia Eagles team. And if that happens, like I said earlier, I think that's gonna make the organization of the Philadelphia Eagles make some tough decisions going into the offseason. So that pretty much wraps it up for the NFL Week 18 recap and all the good stuff that I've gone over. I appreciate everybody watching, tuning in, listening, wherever you may be. If you would please like, subscribe, put the notifications bells on, rate, review on the podcast platforms wherever you may be listening, Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I would very much appreciate it. And like I said, stay tuned for my full gambling preview but gambling predictions going into the weekend. I will post every single one. I'm going to do every single one, so you will see all of that. And I've been pretty good as of late. I've been on a little bit of a heater when it comes to the gambling, so just keep it locked on, and I appreciate everybody listening. Once again, we'll see you next week. Peace.